Welcome to another episode of Raven Conversations. I'm Joe C. Mandel, State Public Affairs Officer for the Washington National Guard. And today I'm joined by Emergency Management's Amy Allbritton. She is the state's Search and Rescue Program Manager, and she's going to talk to you about her program, what she does, and how you can get involved with search and rescue here in the state of Washington. Thanks for joining us, Amy.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so real quick intro on yourself and your program.
So my name is Amy Allbritton. I have been with the state of Washington for coming up on a year now, so I no longer really get to say I'm the new guy around. I joined at the end of June last year. I came from Colorado with a background of search and rescue there, and then as a 911 dispatcher.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm very passionate about supporting the volunteers that are doing search and rescue work around Washington. And so my program looks at both the coordination piece for search and rescue in the state, so looking at when a mission really gets past the capabilities of what the local resources are and helping support additional resources coming in, or if they have needs that are outside of what volunteers can handle, getting in state resources, federal resources. And then I also manage the emergency worker program, which for the state of Washington, any volunteers working in an emergency management capacity that are registered with their local jurisdictions, county, city, tribe, they can be covered under the state of Washington for liability, medical coverage, property loss, so that they're going out committing their free time to do this, but they also don't have to have that additional risk of what happens if I get hurt when I'm volunteering. Yeah. So we ensure that that coverage is there, and then it being a statewide program also allows them to support other counties, cities, without having to worry about if their coverage will fall down.
Yeah. So how did you get involved in search and rescue?
Well, I always joke that I got my degree in search and rescue, even though that's not true. But I grew up in Oklahoma, and I went out to Colorado, to Western State Colorado University, because they were linked to a search and rescue team that was college-based and kind of an easy entry into that world. A lot of times teams require a whole lot of knowledge and skills up front, but they really embrace like being a college-based team and people being able to come in with no experience. And I grew up, my family was outdoorsy, but also it was a emergency services family. My dad was a firefighter for a long time.
So how does search and rescue work in the state of Washington?
So in the state of Washington, and nationally and in a large part worldwide, search and rescue is conducted by volunteers for these kind of backcountry search and rescue or blue sky search and rescue missions. So the everyday lost hiker, injured hunter, those situations where someone is out of the reach of a normal emergency services, so an ambulance cannot drive to them, mm-hmm. or whatever else, whether it be that they're hard to access technically or just down the beaten path somewhere. So yeah, it's by and large it's completely done by volunteers, which I find really incredible that people commit such a large amount of time. And really and truly, I try to avoid the term volunteer and lean towards unpaid professional, because really the work that they're providing is exactly like what a professional mm-hmm. unit would be providing if they were paid. They're just not. And so, yeah, in Washington and nationwide, volunteers are doing it. There's never a charge for the search and rescue services if it stays kind of in those volunteer units, and generally too if we're calling in outside resources as well. And that's completely supported by the search and rescue community. They don't want anyone to hesitate to call for help because they're afraid of a bill coming or something like that. They want to be able to get there and help them in a time that help can be provided and not wait too long and all of that. So in Washington, it's county-based. The teams are generally. There are a couple that kind of go across regions or maybe have a specialty skill set that covers a broader area. And the ground search and rescue part of it is the jurisdictional responsibility of the sheriff's office. Getting a little outside of that, air search and rescue is conducted by Washington Department of Transportation. So their AirSAR coordinator handles any lost or downed private aircraft, and then water, so our navigable waterways, and then off the coast is the U.S. Coast Guard.
Yeah, so for your position at the state level, when a search and rescue situation happens, let's say it crosses county lines, that's where your office kind of gets involved a little bit more and really kind of helps with the coordination.
Yeah, and so the situation doesn't necessarily have to cross county lines, but a lot of times, especially a bigger search, a mission that requires just more manpower or like a very specific technical capability, it might be more than what one county's resources can handle. And so being able to bring in resources from out of county that are all covered under the same emergency worker program, so it's quick and it's seamless, and either bring in those volunteer resources they need, or we also partner very heavily with military, especially aviation resources, and some other state and county-based kind of more technical paid resources that can come in as well.
Yeah. So you mentioned the volunteer working program. They're really unpaid professionals. Can you kind of talk about that program and how do you get involved with that program?
Yeah. So the emergency worker program, it's not just search and rescue. And I think that's a pretty big misconception. But we actually cover really any volunteers in the state who are registered with their local jurisdiction and doing volunteering towards emergency management purposes, so that a lot of times search and rescue is probably the biggest group and one of the more they've got a longer history in it and probably have the most volunteers currently, but we also have groups within that, like community emergency response teams, which are really local-based teams ready to stand up in that disaster situation and be the force multipliers for the local fire services and emergency medical services. There's also amateur radio groups that are ready to help with communications, and really there's all kinds of incredibly unique volunteer groups that have just seen a need within their county and worked with their emergency management to fill that need and be that partnership that's needed, that there may not be a paid resource or have the capacity to have somebody on a permanent staff to fill that need. And so with that, really, if you're interested in getting involved in volunteering in the emergency management capacity, whether it be search and rescue or otherwise, reaching out to your local jurisdiction and seeing what groups are out there. Also, I would be more than happy if anyone wanted to email me and ask where to get involved. But it's really just making that connection locally with your groups, because that is where they're registered and housed, and that's how our emergency management system works, that counties have their tactical resources, and then once it gets bigger, we're helping them share and do that.
Yeah, I mean, anything else you want to put out to the audience?
Yeah, I think getting involved in these volunteer groups is a really great way to connect with your counties, see the good work that they're doing. Certainly the time and energy commitment differs with different groups, but it's really incredible work that they're doing. And on top of that, also, with most of this work being unpaid, donating to your local search and rescue teams is huge. Search and rescue teams and other groups, they love what they do, and most of their expenses for missions actually end up coming out of pocket. So where we can, help reimburse where there's fuel costs or some property damaged, really that startup having the equipment they need, which is vastly expensive and varied depending on the different specialties, that requires them fundraising and getting grants and additional volunteer efforts to get that money. So donations really go a long ways, especially if you're out there in the outdoors. And also just connect with your local teams. A lot of times they have great resources as far as how to keep yourself safe in the backcountry.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you coming and providing that information. If you're interested in the search and rescue program here in Washington, we definitely put Amy's information in the notes. If you like the video, give us a like, comment if you want to know more, and make sure you subscribe for more videos. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you.